and welcome to the U.S. History Public Service Announcement video. I'm Dakota Jones, and I will be the moderator for this PSA today. Today I have also with me, I have Mr. Harris and Mrs. Mangold. We will be discussing the 26th Amendment. The 26th Amendment states that the right of citizens of the United States who are 18 years of age or older to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of age. Section 2 states, the Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Mr. Harris will be, Mrs. Mangold will be opposing against the 26th Amendment, and Mr. Harris will be supporting the amendment. So, I'd like to give some knowledge about the 26th Amendment. It was first introduced on March 1971 and ratified July 1971. The first question I'm going to ask is, how does the 26th Amendment protect citizen rights? For me, it allows 18-year-olds to vote. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I believe that it was the only thing and the only right thing to do. 18-year-olds go off to war and they fight and live and or die for this country. They should have a right in who is asking them to protect the United States of America.
I don't think an 18-year-old has any idea what he wants or wants to say, so why should they be protecting my rights voting for the officials of our country? I just don't think so.
Another question asked by many people is, do you know who supported this amendment and why they supported the 26th Amendment? I did a little research before today's show and found out that this amendment has been debated since World War II. The first president to voice his support to the voting age to be lowered to 18 years old was President Dwight D. Eisenhower. The case of Oregon versus Mitchell divided the U.S. Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled Congress has the right to regulate the minimum age in federal elections. Since you support this bill, Mr. Harris, let's hear what you were thinking.
Well, if we're talking about thinking at the time of the amendment's passing, being a young man and being led into the streets with my mother and other people of proposing change, and that being as far as equality amongst all people, along with stop the war. The only way it can be is for 18 years to have a vote in this, because there were children from 4 and adults up to 100 that participated in a lot of the protests in the streets and got our voices heard by the government in a way that they had to act instead of non-acting and doing something for 18-year-olds along with everyone in the country, as proven by Lyndon Baines Johnson prior to Nixon's presidency.
Mr. Harris, how can you expect an 18-year-old to know what they're talking about? 18-year-olds, some of them are still in high school. I'm still feeding and clothing an 18-year-old. I'm the one who's telling them what to do their homework. How can they decide who to vote for as our presidential elections or even our state elections? No, absolutely not.
Well, of course, some people would believe in that. My belief is that if you are 18 and your son or your daughter can pick up a gun and die for this country, they can vote for those in power in our country.
I just don't agree with you, Mr. Harris, and I believe that there's many people out there that support my thought process.
Well, there's only one thing that I can think about that then, and that would be to choke you to death, but we will not do that here on live TV. Okay.
Actually, Mrs. Mingle, there's not a lot of people who agree with you. There are actually very few people who agree with you.
Me?
No, Mrs. Mangle.
Ah,
And last, for the question, this is our last question. What history or events do you both think led to this amendment to its ratification?
The Vietnam War! That's the only thing that made these people think that they should have to have a right to vote.
well, I kind of go with you, the Vietnam War, but then again, we have to remember women's rights were also included in this because there were a lot of women who did not have the right to vote, even though during the 20s and 30s where they were allowed or given the right, there were still many who did not have that opportunity because they were either challenged at the ballot box or they were just challenged as a human being.
Yeah, but we're not talking about women. We're talking about what events really, what do you think led up to this being ratified by the Congress and Supreme Court and the President Nixon?
Protest in the streets, that's what we are allowed to do. That is our constitutional rights, and therefore, along with the Bill of Rights, we make sure we include them into the conversation. Otherwise, you, my dear, would still be staying at home and cleaning floors and not having a job outside the house.
Well, that's all the time we have for today, folks. I hope you have learned a little more about this important amendment.
Thank you.
Thank you.